Hello once again, ladies and gentlemen. So, with the current situation we find ourselves in the world, it's very interesting to see how it's all going to play out. And I'm very honored to be a part of the human race who gets to experience what many are calling the end, the end times. And there are many different cultures all around the world that have predicted these times to have some huge event happen. And who knows exactly what it is? There are many people that have different predictions. You can do some research into their different theories based on the evidence that they found. Um, and if you look at just what's happening on the world stage, like in the human world right now, then the setting is very prime for something big to happen. But who knows? Maybe this is just what it is like. It looks like for every generation. Every generation, the world made it look like it's about to come to an end. But who knows? Maybe this is actually it. And when I just was looking at some of the interesting research put forward about the sun doing what's called a micronova, and which would basically ties in with like the Earth's magnetic pole switching, and then huge floods and all this sort of stuff, and basically become nearly impossible for humans to survive. Um, Maybe a very small amount does. Um, so again, it's hard to know exactly, but it's interesting. I'm sort of to gravitate more to the idea that human life sort of goes in cycles. It's not that we had this straight linear progression from hunter-gatherers to where we are now. I reckon that there has been many advanced societies before this one, maybe advanced in different ways, and then they are sort of wiped out by some sort of cataclysm, and then starts again. And the more you look into this stuff, the more it starts to make more sense. These sort of theories, but I'm not suggesting I have the answer to this. It just sort of makes sense to me. And of course, you would never hear about any of this stuff in the mainstream media. This is something that, well, if you think about it, if the world was truly about to go through some huge changes like this, would you really want to participate in the society that's been created? Would you still want to pay your taxes and all this stuff? Probably not. You'd probably do things very differently than you are right now. So it would make sense in that perspective that this information would be kept hidden. And so, and you have to look at, there's very interesting bit of research. Douglas Vogue, he has some great research about what he's collected on the sun novaing. So I'll put a link into the description so you can check out his material. And it's interesting to look at uh, theorizing why NASA was actually created and why we went to the moon. And the theory that I've just come across suggests that NASA's purpose was to find out if the sun actually does nova, and that's why the mission to the moon was done, so that they could collect data, information, samples to see if there was any evidence of the sun novaing on the moon. So that's very interesting, and and you look at the dates and when NASA was created, it was just after a huge flare-up of sunspots in 1958, and the year before was also very intense. But the 1958 was definitely stronger in terms of number of sunspots, and so that's a bit of an interesting correlation there. I was sort of light bulb went off in my head when I came across this information. So yeah, I'd highly advise anyone interested in this to look a little bit deeper, and it would kind of make sense maybe of everything that's going on right now with maybe there are some who are aware of what's coming, and when I say there's probably only the very highest up in the current pyramid, I guess you could say, that we have, that is the matrix control system. Those that could possibly be in touch with ETs or the higher negative hyperdimensional matrix, it would only be the very top of these that would actually know what's going on through the information that they've received through these higher negative factions, and that in itself, of obviously, getting this knowledge would require complete um, service to the negative agenda, and I would also theorize that they would have to basically become almost possessed by the negative entities, as I believe some of the highest families in this criminal system that we have. I believe they are basically possessed. They're not even really human anymore. We've lost their humanness. I guess they probably have to sign it away or do a deal in order to have the power they have to be in control by these forces. So maybe they themselves know, but then I imagine going down from that, nobody really knows exactly what's going on. I mean, the even the higher positive, negative, the higher positive aliens that have been channeled through various materials say that this time we're in, something's going to go down. And the Ra material has some very interesting information about this, how we are coming to the end of this cycle, and that it's the time of harvest, and that human beings that are ready to go on to the next dimensional level of reality will do so if they make the grade, so to speak. Call it graduation, and go through the progressions of different densities and how it goes in cycles, and this is the end of the cycle. And but they go a step further to say that this planet is actually going to be inhabitable for third density life at the end of this cycle. Like apparently this is a big one, and then the Earth itself will be a fourth density being or planet, and only life from fourth density upwards would be able to live on this planet. And that's all what they suggest, and it's very interesting. Of course, who knows if it's true? Who knows if it is? If in fact these so-called positive aliens are telling the truth, or if it's just some sort of test or a game to see how people react when they come across this information, to then weed out people who are actually truly good and can be strong in the face of fear or in the face of global catastrophes. So it's all, there's so much smoke and mirrors going on right now, and we don't know. It's hard to find anyone who really knows the answer of what's going down. And I'm not sure anyone really knows exactly what's going to happen. There's many theories with lots of evidence, but who knows exactly what's going to happen? And perhaps also it's always changing. The most probable future collectively for humanity, I imagine, would be changing all the time. Um, Depending on the current consciousness of the people and the choices they make. So the future is not set in stone, and perhaps there is a timeline where um, the spiritually alive become strong enough to be able to have some form of impact that can actually prevent or at least minimize the effects of a lot of these upcoming um, events. But who knows? Maybe these events are just weaved into the fabric of the solar system, and that's how it is. Um, but who knows? And when you get to the perspective and understanding that death itself is just an illusion, maybe it's not really so bad for us to die. And then if like I say, if this planet does become uninhabitable for third density life, well, of course there'd be an infinite number of other planets out there that could well provide life for third density beings. But what I've heard is that the one possible scenario that is happening is that the negative aliens are attempting to maintain control not only in this density but into the next. So they want to lock humanity in this sort of frequency that then provides them control into the next density. And that is hard to wrap your head around, but if the theories are true, if it is true that there are negative aliens and positive aliens all sort of in this war for our consciousness and our minds and that, well, why would they put so much time and effort into this plan that they are orchestrating? It doesn't really make sense if they'd go to all this time and effort just to have it all blown away and have nothing to show at the end of it. And of course, well, they do reap a harvest from energy whilst they're continuing this, but it seems like it is building up to something. It's not just maintaining crops, so to speak. It seems like something is going on, and when you look at Earth as a human farm, you can see how the negative matrix sort of weaves its way into people's lives and causes them to have all these things that then generate the emotional loosh that they are after. And the hyperdimensional matrix is a whole subject on its own. Again, I will include another link to a very interesting panel webinar with some professionals in this field. But I just think it's kind of interesting to think about, because so if that is true, then of course they would put so much time and effort into maintaining this system to then maintain control in the next density, if that's what happened. But then again, the positive forces could also step in and do their thing, which I believe they are right now. Regardless of involvement from aliens, there are many amazingly intelligent and beautiful, positive human beings who are doing so many amazing things around the world right now. And that in itself is so beautiful. And perhaps the way it's being done, it wouldn't be able to happen if it wasn't for the situation that's been provided by the negative matrix control system. You know, the psychopaths that are in power through the manipulation of people, and the governments. Basically, they're just sophisticated criminals. But so perhaps this whole situation has just been provided for people to make their choice, whether they want to be good and serve others, or they want to be evil and serve themselves. They're both are very valid choices, and it's an interesting time to be alive right now, because it's such a perfect opportunity for each side to choose which side they want to be on. That's all very interesting. And I had some interesting dreams recently. One just last night, where it was on this planet, and it was a foreign planet, it wasn't Earth, and it was sort of, quite sort of almost apocalyptic, a bit desolate, but there were many people on there. And so what it was there was this huge head who was sort of running the show, and then you had the assistant, and it was portrayed that this scenario, this game, if you want to call it, had been played for a very long time. And so what happened was the people were split in two, and you even had families going against each other, like it was a complete split in the middle, and then they were forced to fight each other. I don't know why, they just, that was how it was. And this fighting began, but then I went with the game show assistant, and we ended up destroying part of the infrastructure that was keeping the talking head, from going. And it turned out that it was actually all fake. There was it kind of like in the Wizard of Oz, when they reveal the man behind the curtain, and then that big scary face was nothing. It was actually very similar to that, and it was like, wow, these people have all been fighting each other for absolutely no reason. This is all fake. It's a play, and that's very interesting. It's a very interesting dream, and it was also said that it was too late to stop the fighting, which is quite unfortunate. But yeah, so you look at things like that. I mean, I think there's very important to pay attention to your dreams, because they really can relay information to you, and in so much beautiful ways. And I don't know what exactly triggered it personally, but my dreams switched from being just sort of random jumbled stuff, which they are very occasionally now, but it's now every night, very consistently, I have an interesting, meaningful dream, and it portrays some sort of message of something coming up, or um, like showing a sign of my progression, or all these amazing different messages, and it's like watching films in my mind. It's amazing. And I think a big part of that comes from writing my dreams down. I've been doing that for a long time now. Um, so I reckon that was a big part of it, and just sort of taking dreams more seriously, thinking about dreams, and just incorporating them into my reality more. And that seems to have had a positive effect on my nighttime dreaming, which is very good. So I hope others can perhaps, if they're interested, bring themselves to a similar standpoint. And I should just briefly mention, whilst on the subject of dreams, the weeks, about 10 days before Christmas, last year, I I was thinking about why why this time of the year, and why has the Matrix blown up Christmas to be such a time of like consumerism, and alcohol is heavily reduced in price everywhere. There's discounts everywhere, and it's sort of portrayed as a time to sort of be with your family, which is very good and important, of course. But it's like to completely switch off from the world in a way, and just get into your bubbles, and get. It almost feels as if the Christmas period is a very more sort of heavily deeper dream period, in a sense that the Matrix is stronger around this time of year, and it would make sense in terms of it from an energetic standpoint that it probably is a stronger time energetically that time of year. You look at how it used to be a pagan holiday, and the winter solstice or summer solstice, if you're in the southern hemisphere. So this time of year already has a strong energy attached to it, but now it's been manipulated and corrupted by the mainstream and the Matrix to have it as a time of a stronger dream period. Because back, yeah, like I said, as well as I was questioning all this stuff, I started having some very, very deep and insightful dreams, and it feels like they went from they've gotten deeper since that point as well. Like I have, it seems they have. It's like I took something from that period, because I actually remained sober throughout the whole of the Christmas period, and I was just continuing my research and all of that, and I wasn't with my family. I'm still in New Zealand. My family's back in England, so it's a more introspective time of year for me, and I noticed that yeah, it seems like I've taken something from this period. This energy is sort of stuck with me. So maybe that's why it's put across as such a sort of deeper period um, in our time. But again, that's just a theory. Just noticing my personal, but like being aware of my body and my mind, and this is where it can be quite useful to become aware of yourself and what your thoughts are like day to day and what your actions are, and really get to know yourself, because you can notice fluctuations and changes that may have come from an outside source, and you can start to question these, and you notice patterns, and that can help you in your life. So again, it comes down to that self-knowledge, which is so important. So we've covered a nice variety of topics there, and these are very brief coverings or glances over some stuff that I've been researching recently and what's going on in my mind, and that's going to be a big part of what I bring forth on these talks. It's at the moment I don't really I'm not an expert in any one field. I mean I've learned a lot about meditation and nutrition and the matrix and banking and how all that works, and that, but I wouldn't say I'm an expert in any of these fields. I just have a advanced interest, if you like. But so I'd like to just bring forward all these different ideas and what's going on the current world stage, so then people can do further research themselves in any of the topics that I bring up that interest them, because we all have different interests, different things that we want to research about. But of course, there are some things that are very important that affect us all, which I personally believe should be the some of the most strongest focused things that we pay attention to. But it's up to the individual. Um, yeah, so you've got these times that we're in. There's just so much chaos everywhere, and but it's also the perfect opportunity for spiritual progression, which may have never even been possible without the current state of the world. Um, yeah, so I was just bringing it back down to the ground a little bit. I was looking at some an article on the BBC, and I only look at that website just to find stuff um, that I can then have my own opinion on. I think it's very important when you read stuff from mainstream media to question every single bit of information you see there and wonder why it's been put there and what is it trying to divert me from, or what's the agenda behind it. Because there are still people who believe that BBC is supposed to be neutral, but it's very much not. Do not like the name. The British broadcasting is not. It doesn't mean it's serving the British people. It's still very much run like a corporation. But there's an article on there talking about the new tech for 2019 and so on. And I was very like, I guess not so surprised, but just a little bit aware of like how much was the focus on smart technology. There was smart this and smart that and da da da, and it's like this smart world. And this is something that I believe just have a little bit of awareness on this, because it may well affect you in your lives, and it's affecting people in their lives right now. Because the smart system, it seems like a part of the end game of the Matrix, and how they're going to lock humanity down in a frequency prison through the many different outlets of the smart world, and again disconnect people from their mind and their thinking, and just using their brain to do simple tasks. You're gonna There's like every single big corporation now wants to have some sort of like personality on their phone who can tell you what to do and what to fit, and it's like, okay, Cortana, so when do I need to go for a shit? I mean, it's going to get to that point. Like, so it's just things like that is so silly. Just disconnecting people from their being themselves, and maybe that's a part of the test to see which people can really stand in their humanness and have some intelligence within them, and just like reject some of this hugely like nanny state technology that's just a bit too intrusive. If you need to have a shining light on a speaker system to tell you when to meditate and sort of stuff and how long to meditate, well, maybe, I don't know. It's like, maybe it'd be good as a beginning. Like when we learn to ride a bike, we have stabilizers, but at some point those stabilizers need to come off, and maybe they're yeah. So if you're constantly relying on this technology, then it's to me it's not as hard just to wake up in the morning and just meditate. And I don't have to have a set time. Sometimes I'm in a rush, so I don't do it for so long. And sometimes I do it for much longer, and I go into these amazing states when I'm so in tune with my body and my thoughts. And it's I don't need some light and a pretty display to tell me anything about that. I just do it. And it's I'd highly advocate everyone to have some sort of meditation practice, but I know everyone isn't interested in that, but I find it hugely beneficial in my life. So yeah, this whole smart grid, smart technology, and Max Egan talks a lot about the smart grid, and he has some great information. I highly recommend checking out his radio show, but he keeps it to very sort of matrix, 3D matrix sort of stuff. So I think it's good on that level, but then also I think it's important to look to things a little bit deeper and come to a greater understanding of what's actually taking place, because you could end up becoming just sort of fascinated by all these 3D matrix stuff, but then if you get the bigger picture, and you may and it's quite easily lost in the paranoia of it all, which I think is highly destructive in itself. And to be strong and thrive in these coming times, I think it's so important to have a very strong personal vibration, to spend time just contemplating deeply and meditating on love, and just feeling love for the people around you and the things you have, gratefulness. And I think that can provide huge amounts of protection and synchronistic opportunities that would then play out to have your life more harmonious. And so that's a very interesting thing to experiment with if you haven't already. And then the challenge is to maintain that beautiful high vibration whilst facing the darkness of this world. And that's a beautiful challenge, because I think it can be quite easy just to go into this little bubble and be in this love bubble, and and just not worry about anything else in the world apart from what's right in front of your face, and just be in this bubble of love. But um, I think it's more like it takes a great courage and bravery and strength to be able to face the situations in the world, understand what possible futures we may have, and still maintain that high vibration. That to me sounds like a knight or a warrior. That to me is true spirituality, to be able to face the darkness whilst holding love in your heart. So that was a brief overview of many different subjects. I hope you find some of this stuff interesting, and I will post links to you, for you so you can continue your research. But for now, that's all for me on this episode, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.